Broadcasting from the campus of Salisbury University, this is WSDL Ocean City, NPR News Talk 90.7, putting Delmarva first. It's time for Delmarva Today with your host, Don Rush.
Welcome back. This is Don Rush, and this, of course, is Delmarva Today. We turn our attention now to the University of Missouri, which has put racial tensions on American campuses front and center this year. Earlier this year, after weeks of protest, a hunger strike by one student, the University of Missouri football team threatened to go on strike if the president of the university did not step down. The danger of the university losing a good deal of money from forfeiting a game, President Tim Wolf did so. The main complaint by students was that he failed to address racially motivated incidents, indeed what some consider a hostile atmosphere on the campus for minority students. Protests by black students have spread to other campuses, and these demonstrations have clearly raised questions about the assumption that we as a nation have arrived at a time of racial harmony on our college campuses. In studio to talk about this, we have three Salisbury University students, Coy Gerald, Miranda Wiley, and Kyle Metrick. Welcome to the program, first of all. And Coy, I'm going to start with you. So, what is your reaction to these protests? And I must tell you, by the way, as I looked at them on television, they reminded me when I was growing up in the 1960s. I mean, it was different. Say, for instance, just simply the South Africa. For instance, there was a South African apartheid movement. This seemed much more energized. What do you make of this? And is this something new? What's your sense?
I mean, it's nothing new. I feel like this has been coming for a while. Like you said, it happened in the 60s, it's been happening in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and now it's happening in 2015. Racial tensions have been high, especially over the past couple months, past year. And I can even see some of the residual stuff happening here that we dealt with last year with the Ferguson protests. And we had a blackout on the campus in Red Square, and there was a bunch of racial backlash on the anonymous app called Yik Yak. So I'm not surprised this is happening, and a lot of PWIs, predominantly white institutions, are seeing this backlash because of the amount of microaggressions that are being faced on campus today. So it was a long time coming.
Miranda, what about you? Were you surprised at all, or why now as opposed to say a year ago or 2 years ago or what have you?
I can't say I'm surprised per se, simply because, as Coy had stated before, it has been happening and it will continue to happen until that line is drawn where basically you have to step up and say, what are we willing to take? Absolutely not this. So,
yeah. And what about you? What about you, Kyle? You surprised?
Yeah, no, I'm not surprised at all. I think it's definitely been coming with the mounting of the Black Lives Matter movement. I think it's been giving people a voice and inspiring them to stand up for what they believe in, stand up against discrimination and racism. And especially in Missouri, that's a state that has experienced a lot of it with Ferguson. I think the racial tensions all come to that campus in Missouri and build up and escalate. And yeah, like on apps like Yik Yak, terrorist threats have been made against black students, threatening their lives, and I'm not surprised at all.
Coy, assumption, of course, is that this is a new generation of folks, and so you have the protests, and yet I'm assuming that the atmosphere, in large part, is created by the student body as a whole. Why hasn't it, or has there been a dramatic change, from 4 or 5 decades ago? I mean, how do you make that comparison? Because one would have thought this is a new generation. They've shed a lot of those old prejudices. And even here, when I have people come in and intern, I'm reminded that the whites and blacks students are friends as well as just simply going to the same classroom.
Yeah. Old prejudices have definitely been shed, but there's always new ones that will arise, no matter what. Yeah, I mean, I have white friends, black friends, Asian friends, Hispanic friends. Yeah, all those have been disintegrated. But we are still being raised to be seen as different, no matter what. When I was younger, my dad always told me that I had to be 2 heads better than everybody else, mainly because of my skin color. So we're still being taught that racism is still there, but I guess we're becoming more accepting of other people no matter their race.
Hmm.
And I believe there's good progress, but I still believe there's a lot more to be made.
What about you, Miranda?
You're right. A lot of old prejudices have been shed. Certainly, a great deal of
Right.
them.
No more signs, right? Okay.
The desegregation. However, you also have to realize that a lot of these cities and a lot of these places are still kind of experiencing the backlash of, 50 years ago of housing segregation, of housing covenants. So these students who are going to Missouri, this area of Missouri is wildly segregated. So you have densely like 90% African American populations, and then you go 3-4 miles down the street and it's densely whitely populated. And these are because like these areas, like inner city, is where African Americans usually live, where minorities usually live. And then you have white flight, which led to the suburban white suburban culture. And these students, you take these 18-year-olds up out of their homes and you put them all on this one campus, and regardless, they have different backgrounds, they have lived different lives, they have experienced different things, and it's difficult to understand where another person is coming from, especially if you have a different background. And that can lead to microaggressions. It can lead to misunderstandings. It can lead to prejudices that you didn't even know you were even emitting. However, the ones that they are specifically talking about in Missouri were very blatantly, blatantly racist. Yeah. So that is kind of the background behind this.
Kyle Mitrick, you appear to be white here, so.
No, it's a lie. It's a lie.
So what do you? Lots of white friends. So what do your white friends think about this? And what do white people in general that you come into contact with? I mean, are they surprised at this? I know that some are.
I think a lot don't even probably know exactly the length of what's happening. I don't think they understand. I think if they've heard about the University of Missouri, that they don't understand that it's also caught on and spread to other universities. I think they think it might have been a one-time incident. I don't think they really are even aware of the housing covenants, the segregation in Missouri. Even that probably Ferguson happened in Missouri. I think there's a lot of white ignorance on the subject, to be honest. I think they don't see it as relevant to them. I think they don't tend to care. I think they see it as a threat to themselves, to white supremacy, to be honest. Or as in some people I've noticed. I've had friends who even have said that to me. Why are you so politically correct? Like, you understand you are a white male. And I said to them, it's not like, that's not how it works. It doesn't have to be that way. It does not have to be one race over the other. I've had students of this university, of Salisbury University, say that to me, say that to my face. That is how the white people, some of them are feeling and thinking, not all of them. I'm sure if, like, we were speaking about this last night, if a situation like this were to happen at Salisbury University, I think we would be surprised by the amount of white allies we would have. But I think there's a lot of undercover racism here too, like on Yik Yak and on other social media sites. And I mean, we've experienced it, we've seen it, we know it's here. So I don't know. I don't think they're doing as much for it as they could be. I don't think they're advocating for it. I don't think they stand with Concerned Student 1950. I don't think they are really educated.
Well, I want to turn to this whole issue about political correctness. We've heard this phrase, I don't know, countless times. And the thing, actually, the incident that brought this to light for me out of Yale, there was a professor, I guess, Erica Christakis, I guess her name was, and she was talking about Halloween costumes. And in her email, she says, I'm trying to be provocative now. Is there no room anymore for a child or a young person to be a little bit obnoxious, a little bit inappropriate or provocative, or yes, offensive? And there's a discussion about the idea of political correctness versus free speech. Coy, how do you see that juxtaposition? Or is that a fair one? Because I know I've also read that some folks think that whatever political correctness may be, that is actually an expansion of free speech, not necessarily close. What do you think about that dichotomy?
Honestly, I just think she's trying to be racist. Like, she's literally asking for acceptance to be racist. That's all she's asking for. She wants to do blackface. She wants to, I guess, appropriate a culture just so she can get by because it's a holiday, because it's Halloween. And we've seen this growing up. We've seen people, doing blackfaces all over Twitter now. We see people dressing up as Muslims and wearing hijabs and acting like it's okay because it's one day, but they really don't realize what's going on in the back scenes of what's happening. Because if I saw people doing what, trying to act like who I am, then they're perpetuating stereotypes that they believe to be true anyways. So they're wearing gold chains and, sagging their pants because they believe that's what a black person does. So she's just trying to get by on a holiday by saying that she wants to be a little obnoxious. You can be a little obnoxious wearing, I guess, the little cat costume that you can buy from Halloween City. You don't have to dress up as a different race. That's what I believe.
Well, because the other thing, Miranda, the other part of that quote from the email says, quote, "No one around campus seems overly concerned about the offense taken by religious conservative folks to skin-revealing costumes."
Well, I think the inherent issue that's being missed here is that I'm assuming that she's referring to Christianity, which is the dominant culture of this nation. Christians aren't a marginalized group. They haven't been. I don't want to say they haven't been oppressed, but in more recent times, it's more socially acceptable to be Christian than it is to be, say, Muslim, at least right now, because of everything that's going on regarding ISIS, and there's that whole Islamophobia and misunderstanding. So in that instance, I still can't accept what she's saying or how she's trying to rationalize this, this literally blatant disregard of cultures. I think my biggest issue with like Halloween costumes and trying to portray cultures is that they're not accurate. There's one thing to be accurate and appreciating of the culture. It's a completely different thing to put chopsticks in your hair and, wear a Japanese obi belt, but then wear like a Chinese dress and then say, "Oh, I'm Asian." And it's like, well, one, you're misrepresenting the culture. Chopsticks are for food, not your hair. So in those instances, it's kind of like making a caricature out of groups of people who have already experienced so much misunderstanding, stereotyping, marginalization. It's just adding more like fuel to a already out of control fire.
Mm-hmm. By the way, I'm reminded, in Chinatown in San Francisco, you see the way it's done now. It actually originally was not done that way. The buildings actually look completely different, and when they decided to rebuild it, they rebuilt it in this sort of what they consider to be this Asian fashion of housing, which I thought was really fascinating. But anyway, that's another show, is it right? But Kyle, what about this idea about free speech versus political correctness, and what kind of discussions are you having?
I definitely don't think calling someone out for their inappropriate Halloween costume is a hindrance to free speech. I mean, we're not here to arrest you or take you to prison. We're here to educate you on why that is offensive and why, if you're going to dress as a Mexican, why did you have to dress as a cholo, a gangster of like lower class? Why couldn't you dress as Carlos Slim, one of the richest Mexicans, one of the richest men in the world? Why did you choose a cholo as your go-to? Why did you choose to dress up as a thug if you were going to dress up as a black person? Why couldn't you dress up as President Barack Obama and not paint your face black, which is a horrible custom that has been used to oppress black people ever since, like, for hundreds of years, really. I mean, and blackface has been going on, like, even recently. Like, it was acceptable to do, like, in schools, like, 40, 50 years ago. So I think people think that these things are so far in the past, but they're not. Like, they're recent, they're fresh. Like, our parents, our grandparents, like, and it still affects us today. All of these things affect people today. Like, I don't know. I definitely don't think it's a hindrance to anyone's freedom of speech, and I don't think Christians are being targeted in any way whatsoever. I mean, I have seen costumes that I guess you could take offense at. Like, I have seen provocative nun costumes, provocative priest costumes, like, of that sort. But they are not being stereotyped or marginalized. They are not the victims of this. Like, Christians believe that the Islams or the ISIS are, like, and it's, like, all this, like, they believe it's a Christian genocide, but they are not the targets of ISIS. More Muslims have been victims of ISIS than Christians have. They are not specifically targeting Christians. And, like, it's just, I think there's a lot of confusion. I think it's Fox News. I think it's the media. I think it's the media, really. I think it's CNN even. I think they're all biased. You know, the media is really I think the media is creating a lot of these racial tensions themselves even. So yeah, I mean, they have their own freedom of speech, but I think you have to know which news sources are biased and, you know, choose your like Halloween costumes in a way that's
Right. Appropriate.
yeah, appropriate. You don't have to wear sombreros. You don't have to. There's so many other costumes you could do. Like, you could dress up as your favorite cartoon character, your favorite. You know, Halloween's supposed to be. You know, you're supposed to do something fun, something funny. Why are you making someone's culture fun and funny, like, or sexy, or?
Let me ask you this: What about? There have been a number of protests of folks who have, say, conservative views, who have they're invited to a university and then they get disinvited. Coy, what do you think about that practice?
About getting disinvited?
People getting invited and then they say are not. I mean, Condoleezza Rice, I guess, is one example. Yeah. Bill Maher, I think, was another example. People being uninvited. This whole idea that we're supposed to have in universities this sort of open dialogue, and yet there is pressure that can be applied, often a community reaction or reaction on the part of the students to say, no, we don't want this person, and ultimately they become disinvited. Do you think people should become disinvited, or what do you think?
I think that becomes a problem because you need to see both sides of the story, pretty much. If you're going to sit here and put yourself in the echo chamber effect where you literally just surround yourself around people who have the same views and say the same thing that you'll say, what are you learning? You're just getting things reinforced. So people like Condoleezza Rice or anybody else who's getting disinvited from universities, I believe that they should still go and still speak their mind. Yeah, it might not be as productive as they want it to be, but Bernie Sanders went to Liberty University, which is completely conservative, not 98% like conservative Christian university. But he said he's going to go do it anyways, and everybody knows who Bernie Sanders is and his views on everything. So I believe that regardless if you do feel pressured about not wanting to go there, you feel like you're not going to be, I guess, accepted, you should still go anyways and still talk, because people are going to listen regardless, especially if they want to learn more about the other side of the story.
Miranda, what about this idea that, I mean, I don't just disinvited, but even if they show up, there's these protests. Sometimes there are protesters who try to either distract or try to drown out the particular person, and a lot of this has been focused, I guess, on the left, for lack of a better term. But what about that in terms of social activists and their engagement that way? What do you think?
I don't know. I think that seems a little counterproductive to everything a university is intended to stand for.
Yeah.
if you think about it, this whole idea of higher education and having a broad mind and being willing to not even, believe what everyone says to you, but at least to hear each side of the argument so you can make informed decisions for yourself. And to this whole idea of being disinvited, it's strange. It's like people closing their ears to even hearing anything that does not agree with what they believe themselves, and it does create like an echo chamber effect where you don't learn anything, you don't grow as a human being, you don't expound, and it's contrary to everything a university is intended to stand for.
Well, particularly, do you engage a lot with students who are conservative?
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of discussions, and they have a pretty... Go ahead.
I love it. Like, I love talking to someone who completely disagrees with me on every single point, because then I'm learning something. I can at least see something from someone else's perspective. That way, I'm not just speaking from my own views, because I don't have the same background as everyone. I haven't been exposed to the same things as everyone else. So when I meet those people, it's great. It's like it's one thing to be like, yeah, did you hear about this? And they're like, yeah, I feel the same way. But it's another thing to be, no, I disagree. I actually think this is right. And then you can have those kinds of intelligent discussions.
Yeah, I mean, we meet with these people every day. On campus, and it's not like I go out and willingly say, "Hey, do we have different views?" No, I mean,
it just happens.
It just happens. You're gonna run into people with different views. I mean, like it's a college, it's a university. People come from everywhere, and it's always exciting to talk to people who don't know about the issues. Because there are a lot of people who don't care or who don't know, and you try to educate them, and then you realize why they don't care. So.
We've been speaking with Miranda Wiley, Coy Gerald, and Kyle Matritic about, of course, the events that have come out of the University of Missouri and the campus protests. And we do appreciate you all stopping by and chatting with us.
Appreciate
be
being on.
here.
Thank you for having us.
And up next, we're going to be taking a look at the holidays. Certainly Thanksgiving is coming up, and we're going to be talking about what it happens to be like if you're homeless here during the holidays. That's coming up next. I'm Don Rush. You're listening to Delmarva Today.
This has been Delmarva Today, a production of Delmarva Public Radio. Chris Rank produces and is our audio engineer. Don Rush is your host. For podcasts, visit our website, delmarvapublicradio.net, or subscribe to the Delmarva Today podcast on iTunes. Delmarva Today can now be seen on PAC 14. To view the schedule, view the daily times, or visit pac14.org.